So MSP market challenges. The first and foremost really is licensing headaches. What we see with every MSP is that every MSP has some form of licensing challenge. And typically these are driven by yearly or multi-year contracts in order to get the licensing. And these aren't flexible. We understand that MSP businesses flex up and down, customers come and go, customers grow and shrink, and certainly over the last few years, particularly with the pandemic, we've seen a lot of turmoil, in the industry. Often, too, what we're seeing is that in order to get the licensing or to become a partner with these yearly contracts, you've got to forecast what you think you'll be selling in 6 months or 12 months. It's very difficult to try and predict how many licenses you're going to need in 12 months' time. And we also see that within certain licensing constructs with different vendors is that there are overage fees or penalties enforced. So if you've committed to, say, 500 licenses or 1,000 licenses, if you're only meeting half of that, you're still required to pay the full 1,000, which is very difficult. And so at Alcion, we really wanted to change the game in terms of how we license our product. And we've really taken the most simple approach, which is just purely a month-to-month contract. There's no contracts, it's per client. If the client flexes up or down, or the client leaves, or you get 3 more clients the next month, that's absolutely fine. Your thing will just move up and down with us. Makes it very easy to consume, nothing to predict. And our MSPs, in talking with them, absolutely love it. There's no commitments. There's no annual partner commitments to be a partner. There's no requirements around any of this. So it's very, very simple to get up and running. And so that's about as simple as it is. There's only 2 bullet points, and the reason is because it is very simple, and we're getting really good feedback on that. Number 2, security and insurance. I mean, it's pretty hard to ignore security. We're seeing security incidents every day occur, some bigger than others. And we're also hearing a lot about insurance and talking with our partners. And these are some of the things we've observed. So backups are under attack. There's many ransomware reports. I just read one from Sophos last week. There's other security vendors that release these kind of state of ransomware reports. And these all align. It's sort of 90+% of ransomware attacks or security attacks in client environments are going after backups first. And the scary thing is 57% of them are still successful. And that shouldn't happen with the technology we've got available. Security's hard. The game is changing. These attacks are becoming more sophisticated. So customers are leaning on their MSP partners more to fill that gap. And either to fill that gap because they don't have the expertise or because their board or their shareholders are requiring them to tighten up security in their environment, and they just don't have anyone that can help them do that. So MSPs are having to sort of skill up and have resource available in the security space to make this happen. We are seeing a convergence of security and backup. This is pretty much industry-wide. And as security features in the backup products, such as immutability. So that is the inability to delete those backups. So that top bullet point there, where these ransomware attacks are going after backups, if the backups are immutable, they can't be deleted. Often they're immutable for a period of time, but it still prevents these backups from being deleted, which is a nice stopgap for falling back on if you need to. Delete protection, this is kind of like at an application level. There'll be protections in place within the system that'll either require multi-factor authentication, dual admin access, or cooldown periods. XDR integrations, so things like Defender integrations. This is really that convergence of a pure security product coming into the backups and making sure they're working together to combat ransomware, detect ransomware, malware, that sort of thing within your backup sets. These sorts of things are crucial. The other thing that we're definitely seeing is underwriter scrutiny. So cyber and liability insurance now, a lot of the underwriters are actually requiring to sort of see the security credentials or the security posture of an organization. They're asking, how the backups are protected. Do they have immutability in place? What sort of security measures do you have? All those sorts of things are playing very much into whether or not you'll get a policy, or how much the policy will cost, or what coverage limitations there might be in place. And so having all of these security features built into your environments is definitely playing well in terms of you being able to get insurance coverage. I've seen a few of these pop up. not necessarily conversations directly, personally, but I've seen several MSP lawsuits now that have kind of made the news, so to speak. The last I saw was there's one based in the kind of Californian region. This was actually a law firm was suing their MSP for inadequately protecting their backups. And much like the first bullet point on this slide, an attacker got in, managed to delete their backups, ransomware the production systems, and then basically held them at ransom. They had no other option other than to pay the ransom to get their systems back because they had no backups to fall upon. And so, yeah, we don't want to see these. They damage your reputation. But hopefully, as backup products mature and as MSPs mature themselves and start get these protections in place, we'll start seeing less of these in the news, which would be a nice thing. And last but not least is secure multi-tenancy. We, as MSPs, require data isolation. We're often handling a single system, hopefully not multiple systems because of the operational aspect, but single systems that are housing multiple tenants at a time. And that requires, data isolation. We don't want tenant A, tenant B data leaking across. Often as MSPs, we might be surfacing things like self-service portals or basic backup dashboards to our customers. We don't want accidentally a customer to be able to get access to another customer's data. And that's not just for on-premise, but that's also for SaaS solutions. MSPs are wanting to know and vet that the provider that they're using has ensured that their tenants can be kept separately through various technologies. So Alcion, we really, here at Alcion, we prioritize security over anything else. And we've got a number of features in our product that provide this. So we've talked about immutability, and the first one we have is two protections. So we've got a thing called delayed delete, and that's really our cool-off period that I mentioned before. So if someone within the dashboard goes in and deletes the backup set, that's fine. It'll trigger an action. You'll see it in the activity panel. All administrators will get a notification. That's going to sit there as an active activity so that in 2 weeks' time, we will delete the backups. If any point in time during that 2-week period, you can go in and click cancel, and simply that task will be removed. No backups are removed from the platform. So a really good kind of soft delete. Everyone's going to get notified. You can see very early on whether or not someone's trying to attack your backups. And the other aspect is all of the data that's written into the LCM platform has an underlying immutability. We leverage object storage that has a technology called object lock in it. Whenever we write backups into our object storage platform, we write the object lock metadata in there. And so if Alcion itself, if somehow an intruder got into the Alcion backend systems, and we'll talk about multi-tenancy in a minute, which helps prevent this further. But if someone managed to get access to one of those object storage buckets, they can't actually delete the data from there either because we're leveraging object storage. Not even the provider of object storage can delete it. It's built in at the kind of storage layer, if you like. We really prioritize AI within our system, and we've got a number of market-leading features within our product. And what we do is we go down to not only per file, but per resource, but we also go down to the per file level. And so over a kind of 84-day period, once you're on board onto Alcion, we start building up a model, an AI model of what kind of looks normal for that user or that SharePoint site. How much encryption's through there already, when is data accessed, how much change is spread across. And if things start to go sort of sideways, if things start to look different, we're starting to see more encryption, we'll actually raise, an early ransomware sign, and that can help prevent widespread ransomware attacks as an early warning signal within your backup set. We do that for every user, every website that we back up for you has, this AI model built up. The other thing is Defender XDR integration. We're able to pull in threat signals from Defender. If the organization is licensed adequately for Defender, we'll pull any threat signals from there. So if an endpoint's under attack, we can use those signals, for example, to proactively start backing up the Microsoft 365 tenancy. And that really allows, us to get the best protection possible for your estate before an attack spreads wide and far throughout the organization. But we're also able to pull malware signals down. So if Defender's detecting malware, on the M365 environment, say on a OneDrive, we actually can pull that signal. We'll actually raise an alarm within the Alcion portal itself. We won't back up that piece of malware. You can then dismiss, go clean up the thing. We're not going to put malware into your backup set, so we keep your backups clean. And last but not least, let's talk about secure and resilient multi-tenancy. I think it's important to talk about both here. So we have got a fairly well-documented architecture. We have a thing called cell-based architecture, and we are in several regions throughout the world. We're in Europe, obviously Americas, and down here in Australia, New Zealand, or Asia Pacific. We isolate groups of tenants in these things called cells. So that does two things. One, that limits the blast radius. If someone managed to get into a cell, it can't go far and wide throughout the environment. It also helps us deploy really fast to different regions because we've got this kind of architecture that can deploy very quickly programmatically. But more importantly, it provides resilience in terms of deployments. We've just seen a CrowdStrike outage where a bad update went out and tens of millions of endpoints went down. We can do deployments to certain regions and to make sure all the telemetry is coming back healthy, that it's not a bad release. And then once everything's good, we can start pushing the update out wider. But from a secure multi-tenancy perspective, it also, within each cell itself, there are a number of safeguards. So there is, each cell is a fully self-contained set of infrastructure. It contains kind of a database, obviously the object storage for the backup data, and some other technology that sits and allows us to run our platform. But yeah, tenant separation there is key, and so we're leveraging AWS under the hood and using their proven secure technology, to write so that only certain compute can get access to certain storage, for example, and we're handling all of the heavy lifting when it comes to that. And so we've spent a lot of time designing and testing our secure multi-tenancy when it comes to that. Data loss and retention is number 3. And this was staggering to me. I was reading a report a month ago from Enterprise Strategy Group, normally shortened to ESG Group. And they surveyed a lot of customers, and what they worked out was 50% of customers with no SaaS backup, and SaaS backup here is a broad term. It's not just Microsoft 365 we're talking about. They experienced a data loss event, which is pretty staggering. So if you don't have a backup of your SaaS environment, 50% of them had a data loss event that occurred. Some of this is due to, in the Microsoft 365 land anyway, is just the limited retention that we're seeing. And so external backups really are needed to address these gaps in the sort of M365 data retention space. Retention, I always say, retention isn't backups. Snapshots definitely aren't backups if we're talking about traditional backups in the traditional backup sense. The other interesting point that was in this report actually is data loss itself is not just malicious. 25% of it is, an insider or outside attack getting access in. But there's other factors such as accidental deletion accounts for 20%. Outage causing corruption, 22%. And the staggering one here, I think, is the native recovery failure. So this is using these inbuilt protection mechanisms, rolling back your OneDrive, that sort of thing. Actually, accounts for nearly 12% of data loss. And customer education. We're seeing, having a lot of conversations with MSPs that they're having to educate their customers to, explain this, retentions aren't backup, snapshots aren't backup, that sort of thing. And so it's really interesting to see this kind of educational role coming in from MSPs. So how we help with data loss and retention, we like to say data loss is a thing of the past with Alcion. And so we've got market-leading retention. We've got a sort of grandfather, father, son, GFS policy that sits over top of all of our backup sets. So if you're on our security tier, you're actually going to get 3 daily backups, and they are for 30 days. So you're going to have 90 backups for the last 30 days that you can fall back on if you ever need to cover, which gives you an incredible amount of granularity when it comes to, being able to restore. Then we hold daily, we've got daily retentions for 90 days, and then we hold weeklies for 26, and then basically you get monthlies after that forever. So an incredible amount of retention points that you can fall back on if you need to. We don't just offer, whole mailbox or whole website restore. We allow you to go down to the item level, and we can redirect this back into various aspects of your M365 tenancy, but we also allow any of these retention points down to the item level to be exported directly. So if you just need a few files back and you just want them for sending them off-site, or back to the user or wherever you need them to go, you can actually just download them directly in your browser through a secure mechanism. There's no need to force it back into a Microsoft 365 tenancy. And this is probably one of my favorite things. I've used a number of products in the past that for very big data sets, or even medium-sized data sets, the search is very slow, and we didn't want that. And so the team has worked really hard to build a completely serverless, high-performance search that scales. And so even with the largest data sets, you can find what you need incredibly quickly. The last one here is the operational toil aspect, and this certainly shouldn't be underestimated. And so this is what we're seeing in the conversations that we're having in this space is legacy solutions are time consuming. You know, they require manual configuration. There's monitoring aspects. There's a lot of troubleshooting that goes behind the scenes, you know, installing it. The other thing is scaling. Backups typically never shrink. They always grow. And so scaling for data growth, what are you going to do around your storage arrays that are backing it? The compute nodes that are protecting the backups obviously need to be scaled as well. And what happens if it shrinks? Then you've kind of over provisioned. And so scaling challenges and scaling backup solutions is typically really hard and really time consuming. There's also a knowledge gap. Older legacy systems require kind of specialized knowledge, and a lot of newer engineers coming into MSPs just don't have that knowledge because they haven't been working with product X for 5, 10 years already. And so this is creating staffing challenges at MSPs where they're having to upskill new engineers in these products to keep them running and keep the lights on. And when skilled engineers leave MSPs, it leaves a big knowledge gap within that organization. But it's not just about the on-premise side. SaaS can create toil too. We're hearing from a lot of MSPs that their existing SaaS provider is a bit clunky, or it's a bit slow, or the multi-tenancy doesn't exist, and they're having to log in multiple times a day to different things to perform their job on a daily basis. And so this is creating toil, as well as access control restrictions. You know, there might not be the delegated, secure delegated permissions across to different environments. And so all of that is creating toil within SaaS environments. And so these really result in a couple of things. It shifts focus. So when you're having to spend time operationally dealing with a backup environment, you know, an hour a day adds up, or half an hour a day even adds up. This shifts focus from kind of high value consulting work. And fundamentally, it reduces your profitability. All of this eats away at your bottom line. And so having to deal with these legacy solutions is, a challenge for MSPs. So Alcion, again, similar to our security and our simplified licensing, we wanted to set out to sort of reimagine our product to make it as simple as possible, not only from a product perspective, but also when you partner with Alcion. So we've got a number of time-saving features that sit actually within the product itself. So we've got a thing called intelligent scheduling. If you onboard a customer, you can click Quick Start. It'll automatically protect all assets if you want to, or you can individually configure which assets you want protected, even set up something like group-based policy management where you can say protect everything in this group, and then any users that hit those groups will be protected. But what we'll start looking at is the usage patterns of those users. And we'll schedule the backups, those 3 daily backups, for example, we'll schedule it around the busiest time for that user, which I think is incredibly time saving. There's no guessing or no having to set up manual schedules to say backup at sort of 7 a.m., 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. The system will just work itself out. And as you onboard, you'll start seeing that all of the backups are scheduled slightly differently based on that resource or that site usage. We also continuously validate data. This is incredibly important. We sort of talked about that data loss aspect, a few slides ago. And so we want to make sure that if you need to fall back on your backups, that data is good. And so we're continuously validating the data in the background. And that frees up a lot of time, even just in the scheduling and the data validation side of things. Rapid onboarding. I was blown away. I've been at Alcion now 3 or 4 months. Within my first week, I thought, well, I'll get used to the platform itself. And so I registered as a partner with my Microsoft 365 tenancy that I had set up. And I managed to onboard my first customer all within a couple of minutes. It was, yeah, absolutely incredible, and certainly a refreshing change from what I'd had previously in a prior life around setting up other products and solutions. And there's no certifications required in terms of being able to being a partner. And we think the product is that simple. There's also no training required either. So we don't require you to perform any training. You don't have any certifications to perform. You can get up and running through our partner page pretty much instantly. And this is the last one here is multi-tenant management. This is really, really important. Single pane of glass term is thrown around, but really this is the best way to describe it. We've got this partner dashboard that's been very carefully thought out. It's got fantastic role-based access control, so you can have your engineers or your MSP staff members come into your portal at different roles, which we'll take a look at. Things like viewer. Well, obviously, you could just be able to view the statistics. That might be sort of a service desk engineer that's got a daily job to check the tasks. And make sure that backups have run, there's no failures, compliance is at 100%. But then you might have engineers that need to actually operate backups, change things on a customer's tenancy, do a restore. So we've got a tenant operator role. And then we can take that a step further by having certain engineers scoped down in a tenant operator role to only certain tenants, meaning you can kind of isolate who has access to what customer. Which is brilliant, and customers that we've talked to and are already starting to leverage that feature, finding it fantastic. And there's also an administrator role. So that sits over, obviously, that can do everything. That can add new tenants and remove tenants from your dashboard. It can handle all the billing and download the invoicing, add new users, that sort of thing. And then we've got delegated management. So we'll see how easy it is to go from the partner dashboard across to a customer's tenancy to start, performing backup operation roles on there. Everyone hates complicated invoices. We've all seen invoices that are hundreds of pages or thousands of lines long. We pride ourselves in pretty much the most simple invoicing that you can get. You'll have a single line item which has a total amount of licenses that you're consuming at what tier, and then we actually provide a per tenant breakdown in the invoice itself, but also within the partner dashboard you can see what tenants are consuming, how many licenses. So then you can update, your downstream customer invoices in your PSA, such as ConnectWise or within Halo. You can then take those numbers and update your own invoicing very simply, but only have to deal with paying one invoice for us, not having to deal with, loading lots of invoices into your accounting system. So let's take a look at a demo. I'm just going to switch across to our partner dashboard. This is a demo tenancy that I've got. And let's see how quick it is to kind of start managing customers within the portal. Wait for a couple of seconds just to make sure that's cut across. But this here is our partner dashboard. So as a partner, this will be kind of your daily driver to log into. Very easy to add new tenants here. But fundamentally, any tenant that's managed, you will see the statistics for. And so you can see here, this particular demo tenancy has 20 billable users. Its compliance score is at 100%. So compliance score is something that's built up from how many assets are protected. So let's pick on users, for example. Let's say that you're only protecting, half the billable users or half the users that sit within your tenancy. Your compliance score is going to be less. But if you are protecting all of them, but we haven't been able to get backups, those 3 daily backups, then the compliance score will also drop. So it uses kind of protection coverage plus were we able to actually back it up. We can see transient failures within M365, for example, or a permission might have dropped. And so we build up this compliance score. So it makes it very quick for you to log in and see that everything is green. You see statistics here, so it'll break down the number of kind of protected users, for example, the number of excluded users, and then total users. So everything kind of matches here because it's all lined up, and I don't have anything excluded. And so we break that down for users and sites, teams, and mailboxes itself. Failures, obviously, we're all green on the side, which is great. If there were some failures here, you would see them bubble up. And then in the last 7 days, we detail how many backups we've taken. You can see there's a lot. How many restore operations, that might be important to know, particularly if you weren't expecting any restores. But the statistics are there, so you don't need to log on to that. Each individual customers to check that. We bring that and surface that information straight through here. And then the important one here is any malware or ransomware. So obviously there are none here at the moment, which is great, but they will shine up in big red letters here, indicating that there's a malware or ransomware incident detected on the tenancy, and you can go and investigate that further. Take a quick look at managing users, for example. So you can see I'm logged on as this administrator here. I'm full admin, so I can kind of do anything that I like. But we've got Alan down here, and he has two roles. So first of all, his default role within this dashboard is viewer. And so when he logs in, he can't do anything but viewing. But then we've scoped him down. So if I edit his user now, you can see he's also in a tenant operator role. And I haven't allowed him to operate all tenants. What we've done is we've said Alan can only operate this one tenant. And so now that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, where certain engineers can have access to different tenants at that role. And so that's really good for isolating these groups of engineers from certain tenants, which is fairly common practice within MSPs. Okay, let's take a look. Let's before we move on, let's take a quick look under the settings. And so this is an unlicensed account, but effectively, I'll show you what happens here. So you can opt into different pricing. Any invoices that are generated, you can quickly download from here. But it'll also, the important thing, which I mentioned before, is it'll give you a breakdown by tenant. So if I click breakdown by tenant, you can see those numbers align with what we were seeing on that dashboard. You can use these numbers here to update the upstream invoicing if you want, or you can use the same data that's going to be in your invoice at the end of the month. It's broken down actually on the PDF file that you will be sent. Adding a new tenant is very easy. We're not going to show that. But what we will show is this delegated control. And so under actions here, there's a couple of things. View details kind of dives into today's updates. It gives you a bit more granularity around what you're seeing on that dashboard, which is fantastic if you needed to do that. But the powerful thing here is this redirection. And so through the power of delegated access control, we're leveraging the MSPs Microsoft 365 credentials, and we're able to delegate access control off into a tenancy that's using a completely different set of credentials that would have been onboarded. And then you get access. And now, as a tenant operator or an admin of this Alcion product, you can now see exactly how the product works. And so let's quickly run through this. So you can see there's users. This kind of gives you a bit more detailed view of what you saw on that dashboard. You can obviously see any of the backups that ran, so everything's looking great. We'll show a activity panel down here, and you can dive into the activity side of things further. You can see that there's a backup in progress for the leadership team. The important one here, and it will be red if there was, any ransomware or malware incidents. You can see here was one that I've dismissed earlier. If I click open to this, you can see I found a malicious invoice.exe file on Alan's OneDrive. So if we dive into here now, it won't be in our backup set, but let's take a look at what kind of the experience for, say, search looks like. So if we go pptx file, this is Alan's OneDrive file, so you can see how quick that was. I can then select these, for example, and export them. That's going to provide me that secure zip file that I can download. Or I can click restore. And so I can restore to a different location. I can restore to the original location, and I can sort of select how I want duplicate items to be handled. And yeah, it makes it very easy to restore data, or I can redirect it to a completely different user, which is a common use case among organizations where they're trying to retrieve data for maybe a customer, a user that had left the organization a year ago. They can get the data back to do whatever they need to. And so Emails are obviously protected. This is the experience you can see. It's very fast to move through our portal. Again, that serverless architecture that we've got in the background really pays off here. Things like Teams chats, SharePoint sites, shared mailboxes and things are all covered. And so I'm not going to run through the product because that's not the intention of this kind of MSP thing, but you can see that we've got a very comprehensive solution here that's very quick to operate. And so thanks for attending. You can get started today by partnering with us at alcion.ai/partners. And there's a no obligation free trial too. So if you want to see how the partner platform works and you can onboard a demo tenancy or another tenancy, there's no cost obligations. Like I said, there's no contracts to sign. Get up and running, give it a go, kick the tires, and give us your feedback. That'd be great. We'll see you next time.